Hello and welcome to Lecture 2. If you're watching this course, okay, you either are right now or foresee yourself to be a caregiver in the near future. And you're trying to gain as much insight into this new role in life as possible and figure out how much help you could possibly get to help yourself at this point. Now, I don't know if you want to hear my own personal story about my own caregiving journey, but I'm going to ask you for a little patience only for this point. I'm going to be as brief as I can, but my story has lessons I'm going to be referring back to throughout this course. So I'm explaining this to you as a point of reference to refer back to later on. So thank you for bearing with me a little. This story relates primarily to my mother and her physical decline. It happened far earlier than I would have anticipated. She was only in her early 60s when her mobility started to suffer. In 2008, she broke her shoulder. In 2010, she fell again and needed to spend some time in rehab to regain her balance. She was staying with me for a while, but because of a transfer, I had to move. So, as a result, she moved in with my brother. But she continued to decline. She was beginning to lose her mobility further, and she needed grab bars, lift chairs, things of that nature. I visited on the weekends. I did her food shopping. My brother took care of this stuff during the week, but the strain was getting to both of us. And with the constant worrying about if something was going to happen to her, we were on the verge of having the talk with her about going to a facility when it happened. At the time I was working, and I got a text from my brother. Have you spoken to Mom? No one can get a hold of her. Now, my nephew was homesick, and my brother's ex-wife just was hoping that Mom could keep an eye on him while she went to work. But no one could get a hold of her. We start trying to call. 10, 15, 30 minutes goes by, and we can't get a hold of her. At this point, the alarm bells are going off because there's no way she's been in the bathroom that long or away from her phone. She either fell or something worse happened. So my brother races home. He calls the police on the way, and they meet him at the house. And he basically says, "I hope I'm wasting your time, but I think I got a problem." And when they found Mom, she was in her lift chair. She was unresponsive to any outside stimulus, and she was barely breathing. So the cop calls for an ambulance. My brother starts sending out the word about what happened, and he's trying to answer all the questions from the emergency services. And that's the text I got. Mom is unresponsive but breathing, going to Mather Hospital. 11:35 in the morning, January 9th of 2012. It's one of those moments you never forget. And I can tell you, for the next 6 months, all hell broke loose in our lives. Obviously, our first concern is for Mom's immediate health. She's in ICU. She's in critical condition. Her prognosis is not good. But my brother and I are now faced with several realizations. Number one, she's going to have to go to a nursing home now. There's no reason for the talk. There's no way we can take care of her. And how are we going to pay for that? Okay? Nursing homes on Long Island, $10,000 a month is a cheap one. So how is that going to happen? How are we going to check out a nursing home? Make sure it was right for her. How do we apply for Medicaid? And to that end, how do we find all the information to apply for Medicaid? Because we don't have a power of attorney to get this information. How are we going to deal with that? So, welcome to the world of being a totally unprepared caregiver. That's where we were. And after we left the hospital that first night, we went back to my brother's house and we started, we ransacked her apartment, Mom's, looking for any information we could. We were fortunate. We found some things that gave us some clues. We found her checkbook that helped us know where she was doing her banking. But next day when I spoke with the social worker, we were going to need 5 years worth of bank records. That's what Medicaid requires. And with no power of attorney on file, we were dead in the water. So I needed help and advice. I called my EAP hotline at work, and I told them what I'm telling you. And the counselor assisting me said I basically had two options. Wait it out and hope that Mom becomes cognizant enough to sign the POA, or apply for legal guardianship. So this way we can make financial decisions on her behalf. I found out through the counselor that legal guardianship is a process, where I hire an elder law attorney, explain the situation before a judge, and obtain the legal power to make financial decisions for her. The good news is that this would completely get around the power of attorney. We would be able to get all the information and, legally be able to obtain it to go through the Medicaid application. It was also going to cost us several $1,000s out of pocket in order to pull this off. So I spoke with my brother, and together we made the decision to take the wait it out approach. Hope that Mom would become legally aware enough to sign the paperwork. This is a very common occurrence among both the social worker and the notary told us. They had plenty of experience dealing with this. So I was, at least a little bit hopeful at that point. They were used to dealing with people as unprepared as we were. So that made us feel a little better. And sure enough, within 2 weeks in the hospital, Mom started to become a little more aware of her surroundings. She was transferred to her first nursing home, and more on why we moved her out of that later. But it took residents on what's called a Medicaid pending status. Okay, you're in the process of applying for Medicaid, but it's not approved yet. And I had spoken to the notary and the social worker over there as well. They were aware of the situation. They understood the POA, what was going on. And fortunately, right after Mom arrived, I visited her with the notary, who explained to Mom what she was signing, why it was important. And Mom said 4 words: "That's what I want." That met the legal threshold for her to actually, for the notary to say, okay, she understands what she's signing. Mom signed the POA, she notarized it. And it was the first time, but not the last, in this process where I felt that someone took an 800-pound anvil off my chest. Because, before we got that POA signed, there was a ton of information Mom needed, her bank records, retirement, leases, things like that, and I couldn't get any of it. And it's a very frustrating situation to be in. I'm going to talk to you about the importance of a POA, because without it, it is the classic chicken or the egg scenario. But at least now I thought, hey, look, I can go to work and, get this stuff done. Or should I say, at least I thought I could. Because I started having problems with the first nursing home. I was at this point, 3 days later, after Mom's in the nursing home, she has to go back to the hospital. It was a combination of weak heartbeat, either high or low blood pressure, urinary tract infections, and this pattern actually repeated itself 3 times. My mother would go back to Mather Hospital, get better where she was aware and cognizant. She'd go to the nursing home, and within 3 days she'd be back at the hospital. It was definitely a wear and tear on all of us. We didn't understand what was happening. We thought that this was related to the heart attack. It was on the 3rd trip to the nursing home that the nurses pulled me, 3rd trip to the emergency room, the nurses pulled me aside. Mom was suffering from an improperly inserted catheter. Okay, they actually even gave me a picture of her backside to show the rashes from the catheter being improperly inserted and cleaned. This was causing the urinary tract infection, which was causing the other symptoms. And as you could imagine, I went ballistic. Just for the record, this is not a normal practice for an emergency room staff to give these type of pictures to a family member. It is standard practice for the pictures to be taken for the hospital's protection. What they're doing is they're documenting the injuries and bruises that a patient has upon being admitted to the hospital. So I took a few copies of the pictures. Okay, I confronted the nursing home administrator who was in a meeting. After I showed the receptionist the picture and told them that the 6 o'clock news was going to be filming live from their parking lot, she went and got the administrator. So when the nursing home administrator came, I let her have it. I told her I was bringing the state ombudsman in to investigate them, and I was pulling Mom out of the facility. To be totally honest with you, I don't know what happened with the investigation. I was interviewed by the ombudsman. I gave them the information. I gave them a copy of the picture. But really, at this point, my concern, looking out for Mom's safety, was I needed to find her a better facility than the dump she was in. And number 2, I needed to deal with the mountain of paperwork I needed to collect for Medicaid. So right now, my most pressing need was to find Mom a better facility, and that was take care of Mom the right way. There are a few tools that I came across to do this, and a lecture in the later in this course, how to check out a nursing home, will deal with those. But another tactic is just asking family, friends, co-workers, colleagues if they have any recommendations. I actually lucked out because I got a recommendation to a nursing home here on Long Island from 2 different people, one of whom was a nurse who had looked at over a dozen nursing homes before picking that facility for her mother. So I began the process with this new facility. They had a bed available. They took people on Medicaid pending status. And I'm happy to say this second nursing home has taken far better care of Mom. So now that she was stabilized and in a safe environment, it's now time for me to turn my attention back to that mountain of paperwork waiting for me. And I talked a little bit above about the power of attorney. I finally got it. Now I got to get the information. And I would encourage you to go about this as quickly as possible. The social worker had relayed a few horror stories of how people drag this process out an incredibly long amount of time. What she told me was I was one of the most expeditious people she had ever worked with when it came to getting the information together. And personally, I cannot imagine stretching this out. So while it is a very difficult process, my recommendation, put your nose to the grindstone and just get it done, because the quicker you get it done, the quicker life returns to normal. In any event, the first stop was at Mom's bank. It was a Chase bank, and it was in Selden, New York. I put the POA on file, and I spoke with the branch manager, presented the power of attorney, and stated I needed to get 5 years worth of banking records. Here's an awesome tip for you. When you go to that bank, whoever you speak with, and I'm going to recommend, the branch manager, make sure you speak with this one person throughout the process, okay? This way you don't have to repeat yourself over and over. This was very important to me because you're going to have to make multiple trips to the bank. Couple of reasons. First of all, there could be an error with the initial request. In my case, this wasn't the fault of the bank, but when we pulled the 5 years worth of bank records, the first 18 months, I wound up with 200 sheets of blank paper covering January of 07 through July of 08. Obviously, that wasn't going to fly with Medicaid. And because I was dealing with one person, the branch manager, what we realized was that in July of 08, Mom changed bank accounts. To this day, she still doesn't remember why she did it, but the bank was able to find those older accounts, find the older account, and started the process again. So I was able to get 5 years of banking records between 2 accounts. The second reason is the clarification process from Medicaid. After you send in the initial package for the Medicaid application, which is going to detail everything in Mom's financial life, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, you and the social worker assisting you through the process are going to receive a letter from Medicaid asking to clarify certain information in the bank records and that they had sent out. And really, working very well with the social worker as well as the branch manager at Chase, this helped me invaluably. This is a great tip. What the social worker did was she went through every deposit Mom made in those 5 years because Medicaid wants to know the source of the money. The social worker assisting me with the application would say to me, your mother made a $237 deposit on March 9, 2008. What was that for? Obviously, I didn't have a clue what that was for. However, if you get the deposit statement from the bank and provide that to Medicaid, that's acceptable and they need no further information. Here's the tip. What the social worker did for me was she highlighted the deposits Medicaid was going to ask for before Medicaid asked for them. It was basically anything that wasn't a standard paycheck. And as long as you present the bank deposit slip, that's okay from Medicaid's standpoint. So once again, before Medicaid asked for any of this information, I was able to visit Chase. I gave them the dates, the times, and the amounts of the deposits. And what this did was just totally alleviated so much headache that could have happened in this process. In addition, there's normally a $6 a month fee to get the bank records. But because this is a Medicaid application, it was involved in the Medicaid process, the banks waived that fee, so we saved $360 that my brother and I would have had to lay out for this. Now, let me go over the information you need in addition to the bank records for Medicaid. And I'm going to be talking about this in a later lecture, but it's just anything that could possibly deal with your financial life, the government wants information on. Social Security card, marriage certificate, separation to pay, divorce decrees, all of this information here. Birth certificate, do you own the home? They want to know everything about the house. Have you been renting? They want copies of your leases for the last 5 years. In my particular instance, Mom was living with my brother, so he had to provide a letter how long she had been living with him. All loans, all child support, all alimony, all unpaid bills, your health insurance cards, health insurance premiums, retirement savings, stocks, bonds, CDs, ETFs, DD 214 if you were in the military. They want it all. And with every one of those I listed, you have to put the power of attorney on file, get access to the accounts, and request the information. And the amazing thing is, Mom was like most seniors. She didn't have a ton of cash. She wasn't rich. She rented, didn't own a house, had a 2000 Hyundai Accent, and a few $1,000 in a retirement account. And that's the pile of paperwork that I had to compile. You can't really tell by scale, but that's actually 2 telephone books thick. That's ultimately the information that was needed in order to get the Medicaid application up and running. So, after this massive paperwork is compiled and goes off to the government, are you done? Of course not. You're dealing with the government. Remember that clarification process I mentioned? The government bureaucrat on the other end, receiving the paperwork, takes a look at every single little nook and cranny here. And it can be infuriating. Mainly due to the fact that most times, as I was going through this process, you already provided the bureaucrat with the information. They just don't know how to read it. And this is another tip. You have to be prepared for this because it can be awfully infuriating. Case in point, Mom had a $10,000 term life insurance policy. Now, term life has no cash value attached to it. There's no savings account. It's just insurance, like your auto insurance. Now, despite the fact that I provided the declarations page of Mom's insurance policy, which stated there was no cash value, the bureaucrat on the other end wanted to kick the application totally back and start over because I didn't provide a letter from the insurance company stating that there was no cash value. It took a little bit of screaming on my part on the other end, and I had to educate the empty suit on, what they were actually looking at. But eventually, they finally accepted. They accepted the information, and that's just one example. I could give you several of what happened like that. The best advice I could give you in this process: you have to be prepared for that type of thing. You're dealing with the government, and I understand why they're asking for all this information. Mom's nursing home costs $14,000 a month. That's right, $170,000 a year. If the government's going to be paying for her care, they want to make sure she didn't stash money with me. I get that, but really, they have to change their process somehow. It has to get better. Okay, end of rant. Let me keep going on. The time eventually comes. You are going to receive that Medicaid award letter. And there is no feeling like it in the world. The weight of the world comes off your shoulders. You understand the bills are being paid. Mom's being taken care of. But the feeling obviously doesn't last forever. It seems like, something comes up just about every time I'm at the nursing home. Nothing I can't manage, but, there are continual problems that keep coming up. However, there are ways to deal with them. There are care plan meetings you can attend. I go to doctor's visits with her. I have meetings with social workers. I'm still dealing with some aspects of Mom's financial life. She had a series of credit cards that obviously couldn't be paid because all her income was being taken by Medicaid. So one or two times I've gotten letters where I had to respond to and just send a certified letter stating, and sent the Medicaid award letter, at which point in time I never heard from them again. But things are settling down, at least as calm as I think they're going to get. And right now the focus for the family is just to make sure Mom is as happy as she can be and as safe as she can be. And while I understand this was a very long lecture, it's over 20 minutes, it's important for you to understand the story, understand what I went through, because as I go through the 40 some odd lectures after this, so much of what I'm going to be talking about will be the lessons that I learned in my own process. So I'll see you in lecture 3. Thanks for listening.